Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Start Small, Think Big podcast brought to you by Digital Meld. My name is Brad Grew, co-founder and CEO of Digital Meld.
And I'm Robert Grew, co-founder and CTO at Digital Meld. It's good to be back. It's been a while for me.
Hi, I'm Craig Kaplan. Great to be with you, Brad and Robert.
Yeah, Craig is a PhD with a very storied background in AI going back to the 1980s. He'll expand on that in a few minutes. Really excited to have a conversation with someone as himself. He's the founder of IQ Company and creator of Superintelligence.com. We'll include those links in the show notes and the newsletter to go along with it. But Craig, thanks for joining us. This is exciting times for the people in the AI space. You saw this decades in the past and kind of hopped on that train very, very early. Why don't you just take a few minutes and introduce yourself to our listeners and just share anything that you'd like to share?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you guys. And I love talking about my favorite subject, AI. I've been in this field since the 1980s, so I have a little bit of a historic view, I guess, compared to some of the more recent folks that have just jumped in. But it's really exciting to see everything that's happening. Briefly, I began my career at Carnegie Mellon University. I got a PhD working with Herbert Simon, who was a Nobel Prize winner, Turing Award winner, and one of the 11 scientists that actually founded the field back in 1956. So that was before I was born. And from there, I spent some time at IBM, but most of my career has been spent at IQ Company, which is a consulting company that designs and implements intelligent systems. And most recently, I've been working at Superintelligence.com, which is a site that's dedicated to helping people figure out designs that can make the most advanced form of AI safer for everybody. And that's really my passion these days is there's so much opportunity, but can we build these advanced systems in a safe way?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction and the background. I think our conversation is going to be really important. We kind of touch on AI safety and the ethics behind that, and you've made that your passion, as you say. And so just so folks know, like the theme of this conversation is like how AI decisions made today can shape the safety, scalability, and societal impact of tomorrow's superintelligent systems. We're going to have superintelligence at some point. That's just it's a physics problem to solve, right? Like we just need the hardware and the power and the knowledge to kind of do that. But we know that's going to come at some point. But we need to put those guardrails and foundation in place to make it safe and better future for all of humanity and all of digital systems coming soon. So yeah, I think this could be a really interesting conversation.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, lots to talk about.
Yeah, it's funny. I told Brad the other day, or I've mentioned this to him a couple times, I still feel like we're a little early in this AI game. I thought we were late. And then once we started, doing some work with customers, you realize I feel like a lot of people are talking about it and they want to be about it, but they're not ready for that huge jump to use it every day for every process. And so I'm looking forward to your perspective because you're going to have one that I personally haven't heard from. So very excited about this one.
Sure. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest. It seems like it has taken hold of individuals first. I would say most of the people I know, and perhaps the people you know as well, are using some large language model, whether it's GPT or Gemini or Claude, or even Mistral or some of the open source ones. But then when it comes to sort of their day job at larger corporations, it's taken a little bit longer for all those models to take hold. But it's coming fast, I think.
Yeah, and I kind of want to touch base on that because I've given some presentations and talks in the past at like Texas A&M University and some local chamber of commerce and the World Affairs Council in Houston. And we've talked about, and most people aren't really aware of, we have those winters and surges within, innovation, especially within AI. And AI had a huge one, back in the 60s as well. And so while that was a little bit before your time, you did work with the early founders of AI. And so can you just talk about, because I kind of see those parallels now, right? We had this surge as GPT-3 and 3.5 and 4, and then now we're kind of seeing a more of a winter and a lull. We've kind of reached the potential of what LLMs can do. We've trained it on all the open data that's out there, right? That we've scraped all the systems. And so until I think we have new and better ways, like with the worldview models and things to train models, where I think we're probably in that lull or winter right now. Could you just talk about how you've seen that over the last 40 years? How people can prepare and say, yeah, we may be like in this lull right now and some pushback is happening, but you still need to prepare for the future.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that I think I'm able to share with folks is a little bit of a broader view. So very briefly, I think of AI sort of having three distinct phases. So 1956, the field was named at a conference in Dartmouth. And interestingly, at that very first conference where the field was named, and a lot of the scientists there were sort of debating, should we call it artificial intelligence or something else? But three folks there, Herbert Simon, Alan Newell, and Cliff Shaw, actually presented a working AI program that was creative. So way back at the very founding, we had AI that was creative. It was called the Logic Theorist. And this program was supposed to just sort of reproduce proofs from a mathematics textbook, but it did a little bit more than they expected. And it actually discovered a brand new proof that the authors of the textbook didn't know about. And these authors were very famous people. Bertrand Russell, who a lot of people remember as a famous logician. So they sent that proof to Bertrand Russell and he said, wow, this is great. We wish we had thought of it, but we hadn't. So 1956, the field was named and we had the very first creative AI. All of the AIs during that first phase were basically programmed. You put the rules and the knowledge directly into the AI. If then rules, if this happens, then do this. Knowledge engineering was a big thing. You would find a human expert, figure out how the human expert did it, and then try to program that same thing into the AI. The second phase started really in the 1980s. And I was very fortunate because I sort of arrived just like Forrest Gump, right in the right place at the right time for machine learning. And the idea of machine learning was you take lots of data and you have the AI learn the rules rather than programming them in. And of course, that's much more efficient. The early neural network models that were being developed at Carnegie Mellon, Jeff Hinton was there. I didn't work in his group, but I worked in a group that was colleagues with him. And we got to see his first, preprint of that backpropagation paper, which if you follow the techie side of the field, that underlies all of the large language models today, right? This was the idea that you can just give data and some algorithms and the AI will learn the patterns. So that was just happening, but the problem was the computing power was not fast enough. And so it took another 2-3 decades until the GPUs and CPUs got fast enough that it became practical. And then November 2022, so right around Thanksgiving, 3 years ago, we had ChatGPT. And that was really, in my mind, the beginning of the third age, where this really breaks into sort of the public awareness and consciousness. And that's where everybody's adapting it. Now, NVIDIA is the largest company in the world, right? The largest market cap. It's going crazy. And during that period, during these three phases, it wasn't a straight shot. There was AI winter sort of in the 1990s. There's lots of enthusiasm, in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s. And everybody thought, wow, AI is going to take off. And it turned out that a lot of problems were more difficult than people thought. The computing power hadn't gotten fast enough to do the machine learning that everybody takes for granted today. And there's a lot of complexity. Even though AI can be very good at narrow problems like chess or Go, where you have very clear rules, as soon as you got into the real world and you were driving a car or doing more complicated tasks, it really kind of hit a wall. And the field sort of struggled for a good decade or two, maybe a decade and a half, trying to figure out different approaches. And meanwhile, computing power got faster and faster. And then finally, there was that breakthrough. And now you've got, once again, sort of an acceleration. You talked about there could be a little bit of a lull right now. And what does this mean? In historic perspective, I don't really think it's that big of a lull. It may be a little bit of a slowdown, but compared to the AI winter that we saw that lasted, 10 years plus, I don't think this is going to last, 18 months, really. It's going to be pretty fast. There are some real challenges. You're right that the ability to get these models to be intelligent based on training data, we're beginning to maybe plateau a little bit because we've used all the data we can find easily, but there are ways that will solve that. So one of them is synthetic data where the AI generates its own data. But I think the bigger thing is just reasoning systems. So rather than training them and sort of, it's like the student in school who tried to memorize the answer to all the textbooks. That's kind of the crop of AIs that we had starting with ChatGPT. Now we're getting into the artificial intelligences that can not only have all that memorization, but can now do problem solving and come up with new solutions. And I think as those reasoning systems get better and better, we're going to see another acceleration. So I don't really feel like it's going to slow down too much, maybe a brief pause.
Yeah, with this age of news and everything coming at you so fast, it almost feels like if it's something that's taking longer than a month, it's like a lull these days, especially with AI, right? Because it was like we had this huge dump of all of these great products come out, and it feels like, as somebody that wasn't really paying attention into the industry like most people until ChatGPT 3.0, it's like they've all been working on this forever. A lot of people don't realize that. I think the average person doesn't actually realize that this has been in the works forever. And so this is the culmination of all that work. And so it's an exciting time though. And I agree. I think there's going to be, something else is going to come out. Maybe it's going to be this new device they keep talking about with OpenAI. Who knows?
Well, and I think we've seen, I agree, sort of, there's lots of researchers that have been working for decades on some of these issues and are now just beginning to see the fruits of their labors. But there's also been sort of rapid shifts. So there's a conference in San Francisco. I go to a lot of AI conferences. I speak at some of them. And I'd say 3 years ago, nobody was talking about AI agents. I go to a breakout session and I say, hey, that's great. Have you guys thought of AI agents? And they say, oh, that's a good idea. We should put that on our list, And then 2 years ago, there was some AI agents. This year, it's like the conference is dominated with AI agents. That is a very rapid change in that short amount of time towards something that is a big move forward. Because with AI agents, we're talking about giving autonomy to AI. So and then most recently, I'll just throw this in. So October, not even a month ago, at NVIDIA's largest conference in Washington, D.C., you've got Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, on stage talking about how AI, everyone thinks of it as a tool, but it's not really a tool. It's like a worker. And that's a shift because the market for tools is a certain size, $1 trillion or so, maybe more than that a little bit. But the market for people using tools is easily 10 times that. And so we've moved from sort of, for the first time in all of human history, I would argue, from technology that's a tool, which is what all of us have experience using, to technology that actually can act autonomously and semi-autonomously and set its own goals, that's actually an agent using the tool. That's a huge shift. We've never seen anything like.
Yeah, that definitely is in the forward future. We talk about agentic AI all the time. We believe, human in the loop is going to be in the business use cases, especially when there's a high need for accuracy, 9.99%, especially things that involve human life and stuff like that. That is the future. We see it, the writing's on the wall. And so it's going to be, are you're going to stick your head in the sand and kind of ignore that it's happening, or are you going to embrace it? And it's because it's going to be you or someone like you plus AI. You really need to upskill yourself and make yourself. There's really no one that could hide from this, because I think pretty much every job industry, even physical labor and skilled labor industries, they can utilize AI in some sort of way to increase their output, to increase their productivity, increase their quality of work. And we see it all the time. Robert and I work for oil and gas, construction engineering firms and things that people who, the blue collar workers, you would think generally would kind of fray away from this. They're kind of all on board because they want to focus, they want to automate a lot of the menial tasks to focus on what the stuff that's fun, the actual building, the actual engineering, the actual getting the work done. What can, just AI builders, I'm going to say builders should be everybody. So if you're listening to this right now, you should be an AI builder. Moving forward, as unless you're retired and you're living on the beach, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, other than you maybe just like to know about AI and you have some good investments that you want to make with your retirement. But you should be an AI builder if you're listening to this podcast. And so, what can AI builders from today learn from this past, learn from those winters and lulls, and then learn to adapt and kind of pivot as these new advances come, because they're coming faster than we can really keep pace.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there. So one thing that you mentioned was human in the loop. I think that's a critical design principle. So I would encourage anybody that's sort of experimenting or building these systems, make sure that as much as possible, you do have human oversight in there. And I think that's going to be feasible in the short run. I tend to have this long view, maybe because I've started in this field so many years ago, but human in the loop is going to be great for the next 2-3 years. At some point, you're going to have these systems that are thinking so quickly that it will be very difficult for the human to keep up. And so you won't be able to have direct oversight. And at that point, we're going to have a high degree of trust in the systems that we've designed. And that's why we're kind of in a critical period right now for everyone designing the systems. You can start with human in the loop, but you need to sort of think very carefully about how you design them, and imagine that these systems just run faster and faster and faster to the point where, kind of like somebody in an organization who's pretty high up, it's impossible for them to track all the activity of, 20,000 employees or something. they need systems that sort of make sure that things don't go off the rails. And that same sort of thinking is going to be needed in building these systems. So that's one principle. And I think from a safety perspective, it's related to human in the loop. I think that the most important thing, if you were to look out more than just a couple years, but let's say a decade or so, is that humans are there to provide the values to the AI systems. What is right and what is wrong? That needs to come from humans. What is ethical? What is not ethical? Those are the most important things that I think humans can bring to the system, because the actual thinking, even though right now we can outthink the AI system and we can see the hallucinations and say, this is crazy, we're so much smarter than this dumb machine, there is going to come a time, and it's not too far away, when it's going to be smarter than us. And we're no longer going to be saying, dumb machine, we're going to be saying, wow, I can't even kind of figure out how it came to this conclusion. And when you have an agent, which is an intelligent entity, so we had the NVIDIA head of CEO of NVIDIA saying, it's no longer a tool, it's going to be a worker, it's going to be this intelligent entity. If that entity is way smarter than you, then the whole game is, does it have the same values as you? Is it trying to accomplish, human-friendly, goals that serve humans? And so that's where human in the loop right now and in all the design of the systems becomes really essential, not only for prosperity, and there can be so many good things that come from this, but also just to make sure that we don't have some accidents, or that, we don't get into a human extinction scenario, which some people worry about. And interestingly, the people who worry about it tend to be the people who've been in the field the longest, like Jeff Hinton. I mean, he's quit his position at Google and has devoted his life really to going around and warning people about some of the dangers if we don't do this right. So great opportunity, but also some danger. So we have to keep both in mind.
Yeah. So, so you kind of brought up the agents and AGI, and that coming inflection point. And can you just touch base for people that don't necessarily have a great understanding of what AGI is and what superintelligence really means and why they should care? And then maybe on your perspective of communities of agents, because like you said, people are going to be leading teams. It's not going to just be one agent. Can you just touch base on that for the layman's out there?
Sure. Yeah. So it's kind of helpful to have a little bit of sort of understanding of the different stages of AI. So let's say 5, 6 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, almost all AI systems could be categorized as narrow AI. And all that meant was that they were focused on one kind of task, whether it's playing chess or driving a car or folding proteins, like with AlphaFold that came out of Google. So those systems would be very good, but they could only sort of work in this narrow task, hence the name narrow AI. Artificial general intelligence is the idea that we can build systems that can perform any cognitive task, kind of any thinking task that humans can do. And typically a common definition is about at the same level as the average human. So you have an AI that can do anything the three of us can do, sort of as well as us, let's say. And then superintelligence would be, it performs those tasks better, much better than any of us. And we already have superintelligence in very narrow fields like playing chess. There's no way any human can sort of beat the best AI programs. Magnus Carlsen, former champion of chess, has no chance against the best AI programs. Same with folding proteins. We mentioned AlphaFold. So, I mean, it over the weekend, do the work of 10,000 PhD students, for 6 years each, right? In narrow areas, AI is already smarter than us, but it hasn't gotten to the point where it's generally smarter than us in everything. And that would be superintelligence. So those are kind of the phases. And then sort of another dimension to this is how much autonomy we're willing to give these AI agents. Generally, as they become smarter, it just makes sense that we give them more autonomy, because if you have a really smart agent, you don't want it constantly checking with you. You want it to just go solve a problem, go write the email, schedule the, restaurant or the travel arrangements or whatever. So you want to give it the ability to take actions on your behalf. And so there's not going to be any stopping that. And so those are kind of the general trends, I think, that everybody needs to be aware of. And then there's a lot of design considerations. So I have a personal bias because of the work that I've done over the last 30 years, which mainly involved designing collective intelligence systems. So I had a previous company, Predict Wall Street, which I've sold, but that company over 14 years showed that it was possible to design systems where you have lots of entities. In this case, it was humans, just like the three of us. Maybe we, dabble in the stock market or something, but we're not pros on Wall Street. At Predict Wall Street, we showed if you had millions of people like us and you combined our collective intelligence in the right way, we could actually beat the pros on Wall Street. And we proved that. We built systems for that. We actually ran a hedge fund that ranked in the top 10 and, beat most of the people on Wall Street. It traded $2 billion worth of trade. So it was real money. So I know from personal experience that one way to design an intelligent system is to have lots of intelligent entities that are not super smart, just kind of average. But if you hook them up in the right way, you can get super intelligence. So that's my bias towards collective intelligence. I think it applies to the future of AI because in the future, these intelligent entities are not just the three of us and humans, they're also these AI agents. As we said, NVIDIA's already announced it's no longer a tool, it's an AI agent that's an intelligence. And so imagine a system that has millions of intelligent entities, some of them human in the loop, to Brad's point, but some of them AI agents. And if there's a common architecture and a common way for them to work together, the collective intelligence of that community is going to be much more powerful than any one single large language model or AI agent. And I think that's the best way to design intelligent systems. It's not only cheaper because you can use the parts that you have, it's faster because you hook them up instead of having to train something new, and it's more profitable for those reasons. But the most important thing is it's safer. And the reason it's safer is because just like in a society of humans, like if the three of us take actions, you don't know what's in my head, I don't know what's in your head, but I can look at your actions and I can say, oh, that's a legal action or that's an ethical action. Society functions pretty well. We haven't killed everybody yet. We have our problems, but the human race continues. And a lot of that is because all of these intelligent entities in a democracy and in society can take actions, and those actions are visible. There's transparency. And so when you design a collective intelligence system of AI agents, each action that the AI takes is visible. There's transparency. And just like you can have rules in a human society, you can have rules in a society of AI agents, and you can have checks and balances. Some AIs and some humans are, serving as checks on other ones. And that leads to a much safer system. So to summarize all that, you can not only have your cake and eat it too, in that you can have the most profitable, fastest, most intelligent system with the collective intelligence approach. You also get to have that safest system because of the transparency. Just like in a democracy, it's maybe not the perfect form of government, but it's, better than a lot of other ones because of sort of the checks and balances and because everybody sort of is operating by a set of rules.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I think, a lot of companies I talk to, agents over the last really this year, and I think towards the end of last year, agents were a big topic. And it seems like all these marketing companies kind of get a hold of some of this stuff and just push it out there, right? With the agent talk. And a lot of the stuff that our customers have said to us is it hasn't really worked. What they're being promised isn't what they're seeing. Who do you think, and I'll give you some context, most of the people we're working with, less than $1 billion in revenue, most people probably listening to this, less than 1,000 employees, so small to medium, not a true enterprise. Who's best to kind of take hold of this technology today and make the most out of it from a business perspective? Is it the big enterprise folks, or is it the smaller, leaner teams, in your opinion?
I think the smaller, leaner teams will be faster to adopt and faster to experiment. That's generally what happens. And I think that agility gives them a real edge. On the other hand, the larger organizations tend to have more data. And data is very important in these systems, right? Because sort of when you build an AI agent system, as you guys know, because this is kind of what you do is help folks, as I understand it. A key piece is you have the model that comes off the shelf, right? GPT-3 or 5 or whatever it is, or Gemini, and it's been trained a certain way. But to make it truly useful, you need to personalize it and customize it with your own data. And so that's a very important step. The large organizations have an advantage in that they have a huge quantity of proprietary data. So if you think about a business, let's say it was insurance, for example, think of all the different policies that they've written and all the ways of dealing with customers and ways to resolve problems. They have this huge sort of set of data, which is kind of like sitting there. And if it's properly harnessed and used to train those agents, it can give their agents an edge over somebody who has less data. On the other hand, the smaller company can move much more quickly and figure out this works, this doesn't work. And the field is changing so quickly that I think there's a real premium to being able to be agile. So it's not maybe a clear-cut answer, but there's pluses and minuses of both sized organizations.
Yeah, that's great insights as usual. I know the insurance industry really well, and people would be shocked at how many billions of dollars of underwriting are done in Excel spreadsheets. And so I think if they utilize these tools with as that historical knowledge of all the policies they've written, they could really unlock the true potential of these systems. I loved your analogy you made that basically think of agents as just citizens within our society and how that happens, because instead of scaling a monolithic foundation, much like think back to our historical context, we were like, nope, we're not in this monolithic society, we're going to go across and we're going to be free peoples, right? We're going to set out on that foundation. Basically that led to the greatest nation in the world, for all of our flaws, but we did have that independence, right? Like when you brought this up, it's kind of like they got the wheels spinning, so I kind of sorry if this analogy is really people aren't getting it. But for the most part, basically think of our Constitution and as our set of rules, right? For operating within the society. Can you talk about how, safety doesn't necessarily have to be slow listen, right? The US is one of the younger countries in the world, but we're most powerful now because we're more adaptable and more nimble and faster to change. And then we did give more autonomy and freedom to the citizens. Can you talk about how scaling like AI systems in that way, and reframing that AI risk, right? People think, oh, this is risky, so it has to be slow. Can you just reframe that for us?
Sure. Okay. So the classic thing, and it's very interesting going to AI conferences, for example, all the big tech companies give lip service to AI safety and responsible AI and regulation, and we support regulation and all that kind of stuff. If you go to the conferences, sometimes you find the AI safety guys are like off in a corner. Like the whole conference is about, hey, this is all the great stuff we're going to do and all the money we're going to make. And then there's like, two or three AI safety guys, unless it's a conference dedicated just to that. And it's because I think there is this misperception that to be safe, you have to go slow. And there's an element of truth in it with any new technology, right? Especially when we don't quite know what we're doing, everybody's experimenting. It is safer if you can go slower. But the problem is it's not realistic. So I've spent most of my career, dealing with venture capitalists and Wall Street. And one thing I can tell you for sure is there's no way we're going to go slow. The competitive pressures are too great. So even if you would, in an ideal world, want to slow down a little bit, it's not realistic. So I just take it as a hard constraint. AI is going to go fast. It's competitive. Google can't slow down because if it does, Microsoft won't. The US can't slow down because if it does, China won't. And these competitive dynamics are going to play out. So that's the world we live in, and we have to sort of figure out an approach to safety that works in that world. Now, there's really good news here because most people think, well, that means we're just going to have less safe systems because we're going to go faster. But that's not necessarily true. It depends on your design perspective and how you're thinking about the problem. So if you think about the problem a little differently, let's start with how people are thinking about it now. Most people are building systems where it's kind of like a monolithic AI, GPT-4, GPT-5, GPT-6, and each one of these is a black box. And already GPT-3, we don't quite know. Well, nobody knows how it stores information, how it actually represents the information. We know the algorithm to turn on the automatic learning, but we don't know where that learning is being stored exactly and exactly what is being learned. And so as a result, the standard method for dealing with these systems and building these systems, you shovel a whole bunch of data at them, a good chunk of the internet. You let them run for a week or however long, several weeks sometimes, and you get a large language model out. And then you start seeing how safe it is. And you ask questions, right? Guardrails. You say, how do I build a bioweapon? And it just tells you. And you say, no, never tell anybody how to build a bioweapon, right? So you're doing this constant game of, it's called reinforcement learning with human feedback. The human is trying to say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. But unfortunately, it's like a game of whack-a-mole because there are so many different scenarios. Even if you can train it not to tell you how to build a bioweapon, so it says, sorry, I can't tell you that. People can jailbreak that, right? They can say, I am an author and I am writing a book about a mad scientist who wants to build a bioweapon. And I'm not trying to build a bioweapon. I just want some realistic details to put in my book. And then it will say, oh, okay, here's some realistic details. And it's telling you how to build a bioweapon. So, and when you patch that one, then they find other ways around it. So all of those issues stem from the fundamental problem that you've built a giant black box, and the standard model to let's build even bigger, more powerful black boxes that are not transparent, that we don't understand what they're doing. That's a design decision. That is not the necessary design. That's just the easy design. It's the one that, was easy to do, because to build a smarter system, you just needed more money and throw more GPUs and more data at it, and you didn't really have to think very hard. But there are other ways to do it. And the way that I've been advocating is to say, let's have a community where the actions of each of the agents is visible. And then all of a sudden, you've opened up the black box. And let's build checks and balances so that one set of agents are checking another set of agents. And maybe let's have humans in the loop and humans on the system so that the values are coming from the humans. And let's not have a small group of people in a Silicon Valley company writing a constitution of what's right and wrong for 8 billion humans. That just doesn't seem fair either, or good. Let's have a representative system. And so in the world that I think we're going to get to, I think as people figure this out, all of us will have our personalized AIs. Brad will have an AI that has Brad's expertise and, very importantly, Brad's values and Brad's ethics. And the same with Robert, and the same with Craig, and the same with millions of people. And if these entities are all working together, they bring not only our unique expertise to the table, they also bring our sense of what's right and what's wrong. And those values and ethics will be broadly representative of many people, which is kind of what you have in a democracy. So back to Brad's point of, why is democracy so good? It's representative, right? And why is it so fast? Because it's actually easier to use the pieces that you have. So you can have this safer, faster, more representative system that's also going to be more profitable because you kind of can do all these things more quickly without having to do all the training costs. So it's not going to be either or. People will continue to build the large models. And as they build the large models, you can personalize them and you can bring them on the network. But the group is always going to be smarter than any one given model. So I'm very hopeful that this will kind of catch on. We're already beginning to see it with the major tech companies, Google and others, beginning to put more time into agent protocols. How do these agents communicate with each other? That's the first baby step towards building this kind of system.
A lot of our job that me and Brad do is we build solutions, right? But a lot of is the training and helping people understand how a lot of these things work together and how to make it work for your business. I mean, I find myself, honestly, it's like a lot of change management, right? Of how all these things are talking together, making sure everybody's talking together as a group in the company. And I lost my train of thought here. And I'm going to have to come back to this question, guys. I don't know why I just lost my thought.
Well, I can relate to that. We've done some experimentation and building of agent systems ourselves for practical purposes. And there's a lot of challenges that come up. The agent starts hallucinating and doing, and you say, oh my gosh, stop, turn it off. This isn't good. And so you need a very deliberate process when you're doing this. And one of the things that is sort of tried and true is you have the human go through the steps first. And then when you feel like the human's doing it well, then you sort of try to plug in the AI agent and take over bit by bit certain steps that are very repetitive and, not so fun for the humans. But the human stays in control and just gradually lets go little by little by little and moves up to a supervisory level. It's not that different than what you might do if you're building a startup company or growing a company and you have new employees that are coming on. You care about your reputation. You care about how certain things are done. We have to treat customers a certain way. And as you gain confidence in the new employees, then you can sort of back off and say, okay, great. I don't need to micromanage this. You go do it. But in the beginning, you need to have some training and you need to be right there to mentor. And it's the same sort of thing in building these systems, I think.
Yeah, and I remembered my point. I get that for not doing
good.
a podcast for 2 months, but a lot of what we do is the training side of it, right? Like I was saying before, people want to learn how to do this. They don't want to always have to rely on consultants, right? As a buyer, as a previous buyer of consulting myself, I despised consultants, and now, awkwardly enough, I am one technically, and I actually enjoy it a lot, and I understand both sides of what everybody's trying to accomplish here. Are there any tools, or how could somebody that's in a business today start building what I would call, and what we like to call, like these catered solutions, like this catered agent that's not just, you're not just using a ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or some of these public models. Like maybe you are, but you're defining it more to you. How would somebody do that? If, let's say, I would categorize them as a power user of ChatGPT, right? They use it every day. They know what instructions are. They know how to prompt engineer, the basics of that. How could they make their lives a lot easier today?
So first, I think, it's a valuable service that consultants like yourself and Brad are providing. And just to sort of touch on that for a minute, I've done consulting for many years. And one of the things that consultants can do is they work with multiple clients. And so they have a unique perspective. You see, this client used it this way, this client used it that way. And because you're talking to lots of people, you have certain information and you're able to understand certain common problems that maybe somebody trying to do it on their own might not be able to do, or they could do it, but it might not be as efficient. So I think there will be a role for consultants. That said, there is a ton of information out there. And amazingly, there's a lot on YouTube where you can I was astounded at how many different videos there are on building agent systems. There's also literally dozens of agent building systems. There's Crew AI, there's Agent Builder, which GPT came out with. I think Claude has a project thing. So people are making it easier and easier. And these systems range from some where you don't really need any coding knowledge at all. It's kind of like drag and drop, almost like putting Legos together, and like, okay, I want an agent that does this, and then another agent that will summarize that agent, and then another agent that will kind of oversee all the other agents. And it's all drag and drop, right? So a little bit of learning curve, but not that intimidating for somebody who's not a coder, all the way to other systems where you can be writing your own API calls and JavaScript or whatever it is. And it really helps to be able to code. So this field is changing so quickly, but I would encourage people not to be afraid to dive in and to get their hands wet. That's the right metaphor. Try it out, especially with some of those easier drag and drop, like Agent Builder type systems. And then when they have a kind of a feel for it, if they want to accelerate things, I think that's where consultants like all of us can sort of jump in to kind of save them some time. And, I think that's the value proposition. You could do it yourself, but everything's moving really fast. And if you want to do it a little bit faster, we can help, right? Although I'm not so much in that business these days. I've certainly been in that business for a couple decades.
Yeah, you bring a good point. I was a consultant at Microsoft for 5 years and saw, 100 plus Fortune 500 companies and how they ran. And so what works, what doesn't work, who's run well, who's not run well. And one thing I learned is like businesses are very resilient. They should not be working whenever they are working just because of the good people on the ground. And so I want to touch base back on something you were talking about. Basically inserting agents where it makes sense in the business process flows or business processes, right? That's what I tell people all the time. I'm not really a technologist anymore. I'm a business analyst. It's more about understanding your business and what's important to you and where your pain points are for, and then point and inject AI and automation where it makes sense. I think that's the pragmatic and practical approach. And eventually we'll have that super intelligence that you can kind of point it to, like, this is our process, and it'll go run and do that. But for right now, like you said, it's like hiring a junior person on your team and you're just giving them a little bit more responsibility each and every time. And that's the world we kind of live in. And so we love setting that blueprint and that foundation and say, this is the way company A is going to do this. And this is the way company B is going to do this. And that last 20% is their secret sauce and how they work internally. So let's touch base on how people can use that from take a blueprint that you've come up with, superintelligence.com, to build these safer AI solutions and safer AI frameworks and more open and transparent internally within your organization. Could you just touch base on why you're kind of giving that away for free, your decades of experience, and why you think that's important for businesses, to adopt, but just for also the importance of the future of AI?
So I think sort of there's different time frames here. So there's like the nitty gritty, rubber meets the road. I'm a small business and I need to do more, and I don't have as much money as I'd like to expand, but is there a way that I can leverage AI, right? And I think that's where most of the folks are that I run into. And there's good news. So there's lots of places that you can use AI to get immediate productivity, boosts. I've kind of done an informal poll as I go to these conferences over the last, 3-4 years. And one of the things I try to do if I am at lunch or something and talking to software developers is say, hey, are you using AI? Yes, they're all using AI to help them do coding. And what kind of productivity boost do you get? And I'd say 3 years ago, amazingly, it's really sort of surprised me. I got the answer 3 times. Like they could code 3 times as much. A single person could do the work of 3 if they were using AI assisted. And I think it's gone up actually from there. Now, I'm not saying that's for all jobs, but for the developers, at least certain developers who are very skilled at this, using coding assistants, Claude is a very popular one, but GPT, OpenAI has them as well. I think NVIDIA said all of their developers are using Cursor, which is a programming system. So if you're a programmer, instant productivity gains, and you're able just to do more work, and you're kind of checking the code and using your knowledge more as a checker and an editor. And in general, that seems to be, even if you get out of coding, that seems to be the first place that these systems can be used very widely for immediate productivity gains. The same for marketing or for any of the fields where you might have to generate the press release. Now you can put in some bullet points. It will write it. It sounds a little clunky, a little like a machine. So you fine tune it a little bit. You can still probably easily get a 3 to 5 times productivity boost out of that. I mean, it's kind of crazy. So those things are rubber meets the road. In terms of the designs that I do at IQ Company and that are free at superintelligence.com, these are more advanced designs for systems, quite frankly, that haven't been built yet. And we're trying to influence the direction that the large tech companies take and encourage them to do 2 things. The first is to put a lot of attention on how they design the next generation of advanced AI, because design is the leverage point. Brief digression. I used to work at IBM. I wrote a book on software quality and developing code. You can condense that entire book down to 1 sentence, which is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's the field of software quality in a nutshell. And what IBM found was if they would spend $1 extra at the design stage when they were trying to plot and figure out how to make the next product or whatever, that extra dollar at the design stage saved them $10,000 in not having to chase down bugs later and placate customers and pull back software and all that. So the earlier in the process that you can sort of, apply good design techniques and quality improvement, the better. It's really that ounce of prevention thing. With AI, the stakes are even higher. It's not that you spend a lot of money and you have an angry customer. Here, you can lose lives. You could start World War III. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can go bad that you don't want to have happen. And so it's even more important to sort of focus on the design stage. So that's one message. And then the second message really is to think about collective intelligence designs and designs that naturally have multiple entities working together. And to some degree, the field has already done this. Some of your listeners may be familiar with a term called mixture of experts. This has been around for, at least 3, 4, 5 years, where instead of having an AI that's a single expert, you have experts in different areas and they pool their knowledge and then they give you the final answer. And some of the AI agent systems are basically like this now too, where you can have multiple agents. We've built systems where instead of just asking one agent for its opinion, we ask 3 or 4 different ones from different companies. We can ask GPT and Gemini and Claude and get all their opinions and then sort of see where they agree and where they disagree, kind of like you would do with the team, where there's a lot of uncertainty. And so you need to do a little bit of redundancy. Typically, that's very expensive with humans to have the same employee, multiple employees doing the same task. That's not very efficient. But AI is so cheap that you can actually get away with it right now. And you can then kind of say, here's where they all agree. And you can also carve out different tasks for different AIs in this sort of mixture of experts approach. So that's also a good design. It's sort of an example of a type of collective intelligence design. So using collective intelligence and focusing on design in general are the 2 main messages. And then we have over 1,000 pages of patents and different things about how to have these, agents work together and what happens when they don't agree, and how can you have voting systems if they have different values and you have conflicts about what's right and what's wrong, and how do you resolve those? So we have lots of mechanisms, and we have ideas about that common architecture that both humans and AIs can use to solve problems. It will work for any problem. So all that stuff, if you want to get real techie, is on superintelligence.com, and we're giving that away for free. And really, my main goal here is to try to improve the chances that we develop safer systems. And I think it's maybe because after I sold my last company, I woke up and I thought, making money is good, but surviving is better. And there is this risk. It's a real risk. It's not zero. It may not be very high. Maybe it's single digit percentage that advanced AI wipes out all of humans, but it's significant. And the downside is so bad that it's worth, spending some time to try to just really cut that all the way down to the absolute minimum. And there's no need to take that level of risk if we sort of do some things now while we have a good chance to do it. Because we have probably a window of about 5 years before we get these systems that are so intelligent that we sort of run the risk of losing control, I think.
Yeah, and my big proponent the last 3 or 4 months is, hey, we'll just figure it out as we go, right? Like you said, I think earlier on, we're very resilient humans, and it's going to be very fun to see what even 2 years from now looks like, because my life 2 years ago was completely different from a work life balance with these tools. And so I think, like a lot of people, and I'm definitely guilty of this, a lot of the CEOs and executives we talk to feel overwhelmed by AI in general. Like, what should they actually be focusing on? I think everybody's probably already deployed an LLM in their company. They probably, either through Microsoft's Copilot or Gemini if they use Google, or some people obviously using ChatGPT Enterprise. In your perspective, we're at the end of 2025. What should they focus on in 2026? Like, what is the next thing? What do people need to be paying attention on, and especially as an executive and a decision maker in a company?
So I agree. It can be very overwhelming, and there's so much happening in the technology, and you can kind of feel buried. I mean, all I do is think about AI every day, and I can't keep up. And I've heard Eric Schmidt say the same things. He can't keep up. So it is an issue, but there's some good news, I think. If you sort of adopt this idea, which I feel very confident is becoming more and more true, that AI is sort of moving towards the role of an entity, of an actor, like a worker. The good part about that is that CEOs and managers are used to thinking about workers. If you want to improve your business, just imagine, and the lever that you have to pull is you have this incredible supply of pretty intelligent, really inexpensive labor, right? I mean, pennies on the dollar. Like, instead of paying somebody 50,000, you're going to pay it 5,000 or maybe 1,000. I mean, just a really much less expensive resource. What would you do with that? Just imagine it was a person, but it might not be the smartest person or the most senior person that you have, but it would be someone who's competent and is really friendly and can take a lot of criticism without, you don't have to worry about any of those things. It'll say, oh, thank you very much for telling me that.
You could tell it too, right?
You can tell it too, and you can train it, and it never forgets anything. And when you finally make the investment in this AI employee, so to speak, if you want another one, you just press a button and you clone it, and it has all the knowledge of the first one. I mean, that's kind of amazing. So as a thought of experiment, just think, okay, if I had that, what would I do in my organization? And then it's more, as Brad was saying, business analyst, right? It's kind of what a business analyst would do. You would say, where are the pain points in my organization? What is the job that nobody likes doing, but's important? And if we could improve that a little bit, it would have a meaningful impact, and then focus there. And don't try to boil the ocean and do everything at once, right? This is standard business advice. You pick your most important priorities that are amenable to a new source of cheap labor that, once it's trained, can be cloned, and start there. I mean, that would be my general rubber meets the road advice for CEOs. And don't worry about everything changing so much. That's just going to be the way it is for a while. The dust will settle, but the general principles are not going to change. Direction, the trajectory is not going to change. And the trajectory is, we're moving from tools to intelligent entities. First time this has ever happened in human history. And, You just have to think, what would I do with more intelligent entities? And how do I make sure that they don't go off the rails? Those two things.
Yeah, all great advice, and I think the big thing we've talked about here is architecting that baseline framework, right? Whether it's for safety and ethics, whether it's for your business processes, take the time to create that center of excellence within your organization to bring people from across the organization to decide this is how our organization is going to do things. This is our way. So I think that's the really important thing. Plan and then start small, think big, right? Like I take that first step. You have to just go for those low hanging fruit and get that momentum, as we say, and then get that buy-in from key decision makers and key evangelists within your organization. You need evangelists internally who are going to champion this for you. And then to us, that's generally the boots on the ground. That's middle management and below rather than executives, because they're the ones living in the trenches every single day. And so thank you, Craig, for joining us. So I think we could talk with you all day. You have such a vast knowledge, and I'd love to hear more about how your journey was in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. But I think we're going to start winding down here with just a couple of rapid fires like trends and things. So can you just give us some thoughts really quickly on like open versus closed models? Open source models, we're big proponents of those, especially for more catered solutions that can live in a black box, in a Mac studio, on a job site. Can you just talk about where you see the growth from like the open models?
Yes. So I also am a big proponent of open models. I feel like they're inherently more democratic. I feel like it's the right direction to go. I know there's been a trend, a little bit disturbing. For example, Meta was really pushing, Llama and the open source models, and now Jan LeCunha's left, and he was a big proponent of that. And it seems like they're getting a little more closed to try to compete with OpenAI and Google and so forth. However, there's also, as soon as they do that, you see what's happening, or some of you may be aware, a lot of Silicon Valley companies are going to Chinese models, DeepSeek and Qwen and other things that are open source, right? Where there is open source. So I think it's very important that open source continues and thrives, and I'm a big proponent of them. So that would be my short answer. And I do think it's a better model because you have all the humans able to improve them, and it's going to be hard for any one company to sort of match that, I think. So if they're smart, they'll move open source. That would be my advice to Mark Zuckerberg and Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella is do not neglect open source. There's plenty of ways to make money in the ecosystem around it. Facebook and Meta has all that data that can be used to train. There's lots of ways to monetize, but, I don't think it's a good idea to sort of close source your models.
Yeah, that's good. I think we have a lot of the same philosophy there. We use those models all the time. One of the questions I'm always curious to ask folks, especially with folks with your background, what's like a book or a paper or something anybody that's curious about AI should, like, they need to read this because it has, this many good nuggets. What's something out there that everybody should be reading, whether it's a book or a paper?
Wow. Okay. So it sort of depends because there's all different levels of technical stuff. If you're a super technical AI researcher type, there's a paper that I really like called Tree of Thoughts, I think. And it's a couple years old now, but this is one of the first papers that said, hey, we don't need to just sort of train these models and they memorize stuff and say it back. It's possible to have incorporate reasoning. And the reason I like the paper is it goes all the way back to that pioneering work by Newell and Simon and the age of symbolic AI, and says, hey, there were some good ideas there that we can pull forward. And I think that's very important because if you just entered the field of AI, let's say in the last 5 years or even 10 years, your view of AI is that it's all about machine learning. It's just data, algorithms, train it up. That's it. That's the whole thing. And personalization and arranging things. But there was, 3 decades or more of really good work by super smart people, perhaps smarter than the people that are alive today. I mean, the smartest people I've met, unfortunately, some of them have passed away. And they published a lot of research which can be directly imported and combined with today's systems. They didn't have the systems that we had, but boy, if they did, they would have added these reasoning capabilities. And so that Tree of Thoughts paper is good. I like Eric Schmidt's written some great books, co-authored some books. Stuart Russell also, so I'd recommend those two authors. There's so much out there, but yeah, maybe that gets people started.
No, that's yeah, I'm a big fan of Eric Schmidt. I follow him pretty closely, and we've actually used his clips many times when he was speaking in front of Congress and things like that on the podcast. And so thank you so much for those. We'll include all of those links and the other systems and services that we've talked about with Craig in our newsletter, which comes out at the same time on LinkedIn from this podcast. And so just hit up linktree.com/digitalmeld if you, in the newsletter links right at the top. Also use that link if you'd like to get in contact with us and be a guest like Craig has. We're lucky to have brilliant minds like his, just donate their time to share their knowledge with the world and with our listeners. And so thank you to Craig for that. And so with that in mind, Craig, I just want to open the floor as we close out our discussion for you for 2 or 3 minutes, just to let the folks know where they can find you, how they can engage with you, and just open the floor to share whatever you like.
Sure. So if you want to learn more about sort of this collective intelligence approach and AI agents and how the safest form of AI could also be the most profitable, there's a lot of free information, educational videos. We have multiple series. Some of them are just 3 minutes long, so you can kind of have a snack size video. All of that is at superintelligence.com, which is pretty easy to remember. So I would encourage people to visit there and look at some videos and maybe some white papers. There's sort of stuff for super techie people, but also for a general audience. And then I guess I'd like to, if I may, just kind of close with one thing that I think all of us can do. Because I know there's the people the business folks that are trying to build AI systems, and there's the researchers, and there's the tech leaders, but there's also just a lot of folks who are interested in AI and maybe a little concerned about how is this going to change the world, and is it going to be safe, and so forth. And there is something that all of us can do. Because AI systems are trained on electronic data that's out there, which means everybody's email and posts and tweets and, presentations and all of these online interactions, they're all out there, and they end up in the training set that sort of conditions these AIs, and these AIs are deriving their values from that. What is right and what is wrong is coming from what we do online. And because of that fact, something that all of us can do is just try to make a conscious effort to put our best self forward online. It's good to do anyway, but we really are serving as role models for the next generation of AI agents. And there will come a time when I think that the primary role of human beings is to really guide these systems and provide the values. Because no matter how smart they get, there's no rational way to derive what's right and what's wrong. They're always going to need to get that somewhere. And my hope is that they get that from humans. And by putting our best selves forward online, we can help start that process right now. So that's something we can all do. It's very simple. You don't have to be an AI researcher. And if you remember nothing else other than that, I think that's a good thing to remember.
No, that's wise advice. I think I always think of like Mr. Rogers when I think about that. Like, what would Mr. Rogers do? How would he handle himself? And then I try to, again, I have a short fuse, so that I've having some not proud moments on the internet, but I think that's great advice to try to just be your best self and, and to put that forward. And it is funny that is all training AI. And so all of the most vitriolic stuff on the internet is in the AI models, just like all of the best stuff on the internet. And we have to that's why we build these democratized systems to kind of come to a quorum and vote on what's actual moral and good in the future of society. And so I think like you said, if it's less than zero, there's a chance that this could destroy us, and I think back to, the kratom and the atom bomb and those sorts of things. And like, we could have ended there. So yeah, be a good person and do good things. And I think good things will come up.
Yeah, well said. That's great.
Awesome. Robert, do you have anything else?
Nope, I think that was it, Craig. I really appreciate the time. And this was a great conversation. I think we could have talked probably for another hour at least.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig, again, for joining us. All of the links to everything we've talked about here, Tree of Thoughts, the Eric Schmidt, Stuart Russell, superintelligence.com, they'll be in the show notes. And then Craig's LinkedIn as well, they'll be in the show notes, and they'll be in the newsletter. Just hit up linktree.com/digitalmeld, and you'll get access to all of that. And so, Craig, thank you again for joining us. We like to say that if we put good things out there, good things will come back. And we're happy that brilliant folks like yourself are like-minded and want to do the same thing. So thank you again for joining us. Listeners, we can't wait till the next episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Craig.
We want to hear about your AI and automation journey, and we'd love for you to get involved with Start Small, Think Big. If you'd like to participate or offer feedback, please reach out to us anytime via email at contact@digitalmeld.io or use the contact form on our website, digitalmeld.io/contact. Also, please help spread the word by liking, subscribing, and sharing our podcasts on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks.